Jimmy Butler wanted to get nuts. You want to get nuts? Let's get nuts. So it finally happened. Jimmy Butler is no longer a Minnesota Timberwolf, which is probably to his great pleasure, clearly. I mean, the whole way he orchestrated this, pissing and moaning, demanding the trade, holding out a practice, and then coming to practice and beating Cat and Wiggins and crew with the third crew. And my goodness, a sit-down interview. This whole thing has been orchestrated masterfully. And Jimmy Butler's penance, his punishment for this behavior, this petulant, childish, bratty behavior, was to get traded to a good Philadelphia 76ers team where he might help make them true contenders in the Eastern Conference and maybe even in the NBA Finals. Who knows? Jimmy Butler is a Philadelphia 76er. It's a big deal. So when you look at this trade, the 76ers get Jimmy Butler in his contract year and former first-round pick Justin Patton, even though he's injured currently. And the Timberwolves get Dario Saric, Robert Covington, Jared Bayless, and a 2022 second-round pick. Those are the particulars of the deal. And when you look at this deal initially, you're like, man, Philadelphia didn't give up a whole lot to get a four-time All-Star, one of the best two-way players in the league. And perhaps you're right. That said, though, the T-Wolves got to a point where there was no alternative. They had to trade Jimmy Butler. Now, when you look at this, what did the Philadelphia 76ers really get? They get an alpha male. They get a multiple-time All-Star, one of the best two-way players in the NBA, a star, superstar type of player in a contract year to add to a core with two great young stars in Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons. They get that third dude that can help elevate them to the level of currently in the Eastern Conference, the Celtics, the Raptors, the Bucks. If they weren't already in that mix, they most certainly are now. And when you look at that trio, Embiid, Simmons, Butler, there's a lot of star power there. There's a lot of pure talent there. And their top three can rival just about anybody's in the league. And when you look at this from the Philadelphia 76ers standpoint, you get this opportunity, a similar package that you would have offered for Kawhi Leonard. You have to take it. You absolutely have to take it. While Dario Saric is a nice player and Robert Covington is a nice player, the fact is that Jimmy Butler is a special player. And you don't always get the opportunity to add special players. So when that opportunity presents itself and you could give up nice players and not have to give up a bunch of future draft picks in order to get the chance to stab at a special player, bring him into the fold for one season and perhaps long-term, even longer, then you absolutely must make that deal. Now, is there a chance that Jimmy Butler doesn't play nice, play well with Embiid and Simmons, and it causes all types of issues? Perhaps. And if that's the case, you let him walk after the season, and you gave up a couple of role players taking a stab at trying to win a championship. You had to make this deal. You absolutely had to. This is risk in the process, yes, but this was a necessary next step in the process. Because here's what we know, guaranteed, is that with just Embiid and Simmons, the Sixers weren't going anywhere when it really matters. They're not beating the Celtics in the playoffs. They probably aren't beating the Raptors in the playoffs. They may or may not even have a chance to beat the Bucks in the playoffs the way they were current state. And they couldn't do that. They're not a championship contending team. So you had to roll the dice, take a chance, and shake things up a bit. Lose a little bit of depth, lose a little bit of front court prowess to get a two-way perimeter player that can impact the game in a variety of ways. This is absolutely a win-win-win, just effing do it type of deal for the 76ers. And in terms of the T-Wolves, what do? They get rid of a guy who clearly didn't want to be there. They get rid of a guy who was messing up the chemistry of that locker room, who was messing up that team, and again, just really didn't want to be there. They also get 2 front court players in Saric and Covington who can space the floor, they can shoot, they can complement Karl-Anthony Towns especially, and also Andrew Wiggins. This is not a horrible deal for the Timberwolves. They get some long-term viability, some long-term value to get rid of Jimmy Butler. And when you look at the grand scheme of things, they ultimately ended up giving up, what would you say, Zach LaVine, Chris Dunn, Lauri Markkanen, to get Dario Saric and Robert Covington. Perhaps that deal seems a bit lopsided. I don't know that it does. Zach LaVine is the type of guy that puts up big numbers on crappy teams. Markkanen's hurt. Dunn's hurt. And in the grand scheme of things for the Timberwolves, it didn't matter. They weren't going to win a championship with Jimmy Butler. They weren't going to contend for a championship with Jimmy Butler. So they're just going to do the same thing without Jimmy Butler. And if anything, the shakeup in the chemistry of the leadership of that locker room, the shakeup to the roster, might make the Timberwolves a little bit better. Because if we're being honest here, as much as I'm a Jimmy fan, the truth of the matter is the Timberwolves barely got into the playoffs last year when they should have been a damn 4 or 5 seed. So now, if anything, they feel more like the 7 or 8 seed that they ultimately are. What's more head-scratching about this for the Timberwolves is that they didn't get future first-round picks out of this. Especially when the reports were that Houston offered 4 first-round picks, and knowing that those first-round picks, by the laws of the NBA, can't be back-to-back years. You don't know what's going to happen with Houston in the future. They're not playing well right now. Why wouldn't you want the chance at 4 future first-round picks spaced out like 2019, 21, 23, 25, knowing that there's a chance that at least 1 or 2 of them potentially is in the lottery, 1 or 2 of them might be a top 5 pick, 1 or 2 of them someday might deliver you a franchise type of player. Because instead you would want to get a couple of role players for now, when you're not doing shit now. This is one of the problems with the NBA now, is that you have a couple of teams that really matter, and frankly, the rest of them don't. And if you're in a position that you don't matter, and you still make moves, and you still don't matter, then why in the hell are you making those moves? I understand not wanting to trade him to a Western Conference team, hence why you don't trade him to the Rockets or the Lakers or somebody like that. But long term, it feels like, well, yes, he could be a thorn in your ass and a pain in your side, or I've messed that up, but you get the damn point. Long term, there might have been more value there with those first-round picks than getting a couple of front-court role players like Saric and Covington and a 2022 second-round pick. I'm just saying. It feels like the Timberwolves botched this. It feels like the Timberwolves hedged their bets and they hesitated and didn't get the best package for themselves long term. If you're going to trade a star like Jimmy Butler after a little over a year ago, you traded for him your damn self, then knowing the here and now didn't work, you should be concerned about setting yourself up long term for the future. But of course, Thibodeau is the coach and he don't care about the future. He's going to run the legs off of his guys now. So for the T-Wolves, they got something back for Jimmy, and they got guys that can play. They got guys that can contribute, and guys that can play well with the guys that they have, guys that can space the floor, guys that can shoot. And that's important to have in today's league. There's no question. And the 76ers will miss those guys a little bit. But long term, the T-Wolves didn't get the best package for themselves. And the 76ers got a third dude, got an alpha male, and at least have to feel like they've increased their chances of being real contenders in the Eastern Conference. How this all plays out remains to be seen. But by God, it's going to be a lot of fun to see what shakes out in the next few months with Jimmy and Philly.